What do leaders misunderstand about the difference between happiness and engagement? Again, especially when they're looking at performance or ROI.
So the way that I remember it is happiness is what your heart needs,
Mm.
and engagement is what your brain needs.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are not going to like that because that's too fluffy. That's just how I remember it.
Mm.
Engagement is here and happiness is here. If you don't like that version of it, which I happen to like, go on, Matt.
Well, no, I was just thinking back to what I understand about the book. It kind of maps to the different. You could map it if you don't like that because it's too
Yeah.
fluffy. You could map it directly to the different ways that the brain processes information. So you may or may not have been about to say this, but so for instance, the heart would be more instinctual and reflection, for example.
That's exactly where I'm going with
Right.
it. But I mean, you've understood the book beyond most people that I speak to, which credit to you, Matt. But so if we want to take it down to another level, it's just happiness is what you feel, and engagement is what you think,
Mm.
and acknowledging that they can be different. And again, use relationships as an example. You can feel that you're in a negative relationship, but you can think the relationship's okay. And that is what really difficult for people with spreadsheets to get their head around, that how you think and how you feel can be different, which is that, go back to your point, that's a misunderstanding. So when you look at the data and you interview 5 million people, you can be engaged at work but unhappy.
Mm.
You can also be unhappy at work and engaged. So that, for people who like everything to fit into black and white and into spreadsheet cells, is confusing and goes back to why so many surveys are rational, because rational stuff you can put in a box. Emotions, they don't like to be put in boxes, and that's the challenge, and that's why I think partly engagement has dominated emotional surveys, because it's easier to monitor, it's easier to look, and I blame the saying, if you can measure it, you can manage it, for this.
Yeah, it's not strictly speaking true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
not
like
not
our
in the conventional sense
yeah,
anyway.
just because you can measure something doesn't mean you can manage it.
No.
But we as human beings, we like to believe that we can control things. But there is so much in life that isn't controllable, and our emotions, even though we can impact them, is part of that.
This may form the basis for the answer to my next question, which is around, where organizations are most likely to get a false sense of security when it comes to well-being. So, for example, high engagement scores and poor well-being.
That's the big one we saw in the pandemic. I've sort of forgotten about the pandemic. I think we've all had this like amnesia about it.
Sure.
We saw that throughout the pandemic. I was about to say high levels, average levels of engagement and below levels of happiness. So if you were just looking at an engagement metric, people were looking at their data. We published this data at the time, and everyone was engaged, but they were deeply unhappy. What that led to was if you look at the stats, what became known as the Great Resignation.
Sure.
I'm not trying to show off and say we were smart, but we could see that was coming in our data, and it did play through. But it wasn't because we're smart. It's just because we could see it. Because emotions are a predictor of the future. And this is what sports people know. This is why lots of sports teams were the first people to adopt the happiness index, because they knew that how you feel impacts whether you can win a race, win a football match, win a golf match. They have understood. And actually, if we let's take a look at cricket just for a second, one of the first sports that came to the happiness index. They were one of the first sports to actually look into mental health, because it was there. There was players like Marcus Trescothick talking about mental health and not being able to play. There was Jonathan Trott. Off air, Matt and I were talking about eating disorders. Eating disorders for men is much less understood. For me, Freddie Flintoff, the English cricketer, educated me on stuff that I did not know about eating disorders. So I've gone way off track from your question there, Matt.
Well, firstly, on the Freddie Flintoff eating sort of thing, yeah, we were talking about that off camera, and that's interesting because as we're filming this in early February, Eating Disorder Awareness Week, as I mentioned, it's at the end of February and beginning of March every year. But 2 years ago, the theme was, because they switched themes each year. This year it's about community, but the theme 2 years ago was about men and eating disorders. I think the catchphrase or the strapline was "Stranger things can happen," type thing. Really interesting. And to add to that, so you mentioned about sports teams being one of the first kind of organizations, types of businesses to come to the happiness index. But it sounds like there's still work to do in terms of getting organizations to understand well-being, even though that they know it matters.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I just think it's structural, and I think it's that it's not connected internally. It's not, you don't see it in most P&Ls. Most of our customers, we try and rebuild their P&L. We call it P&L 2.0, so they can see how their culture is impacting their bottom line. But most companies are not doing that. So, and it's not easy to do, but it's not impossible to do. And we do that with our customers. And once you start doing that and you start seeing the costs in the P&L, that's when you can't ignore it. And going back to that bit before about incompetence and ignorance.
You can't. Well, yeah, exactly. You can't ignore it if it's literally linked to your deliverables.
Yeah.
Your P&L, and that's interesting. So I spoke with Chris Cummings, CEO of Wellbeing at Work World, and he's a specialist in mental health strategy. And what really surprised me from that conversation was that actually, as you've just alluded to, talking about mental health at board level, the mental health and well-being at board level isn't a thing. It blew my mind, because I'm like, well, but we've got all the data. These reports come out from Deloitte and all these organizations, CIPD, every single year. We know how much it costs the UK economy and businesses, presenteeism, absenteeism, etc. We know that. Why would it not be a conversation at board level? And yeah, to your point, that's obviously why the work that you do is so crucial, because you're helping organizations to actually integrate this link between culture and their profit and loss sheet, which is essentially speaking the language of people at board level.
Yeah. And it's so easy to do. I only sit on 3 or 4 boards total of companies, the happiness index and other companies I advise. But when I'm in the chair role, I go around the room and I ask people to talk about their work happiness and their personal happiness. Now, to some people, like someone who's listening might be running a FTSE 100, they think that is the worst use of time. People might be saying blah, 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 blah. But there is so much research now around the importance of the well-being, the leaders in the organization impacting the performance as well, disproportionately to everyone else. So it is so important. If you've got people that are running an organization that are burnt out, they're stressed, they're suffering, do you think if you think you're a CEO of a company, let's pick 10,000 company, the CEO...
Headcount of 10,000, yes.
The CEO of that organization, they're not going to be in the best place to make the best decisions if their mental and physical well-being is not in the right space. And the board should be a space where that can be discussed. But there's many reasons why people don't. And again, some of them are structural. Would they want something that's recorded to be written down? All of these fears that they will have. Again, let's pick on sports. Some people will say they don't want to tell their manager that they don't feel right because they don't want to be left out of the team.
Yeah.
And you may have that happening in corporates as well, but it can be done. Again, it's not easy, but it's not impossible.